let me bring in my other two guests. We are joined with Lawrence Wilkerson, or I should say Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, and Chief Dennis Fritz. Let's go with Fritz first. Chief Fritz is retired Command Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He is former director of the Eisenhower Media Network with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as the principal senior advisor to four-star commanders at Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held the additional duty as senior enlisted advisor to the commander of North America Aerospace Defense Command. And he is also author of the book, Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. I've been hearing fantastic things about that book. Even one of my guests was raving about it. We also have Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. He is the former distinguished visiting professor of the government and public policy at College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He also taught 6 years in the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is also probably best known as retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. You guys doing okay today?
Good to be with you, Jamal.
Doing well.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us again.
Excellent. So I want to hit two subjects. One, I want to hit, let's say, the Gaza quote-unquote ceasefire, as it's called. And the other one, I want to hit what's taking place currently in Ukraine. And I want to start with the Gaza one first. Witkoff made the point of saying that he was in contact with the CIA 3 times a day. Now, this is fascinating because Witkoff is not really part of the government, but whatever. Let's go with it, right? And that he was apparently not aware that Hamas had been willing to make a deal for like 2 years. What is happening with this? I mean, A, do you believe Witkoff when he's saying this? And B, how does the CIA not know that Hamas was open for a deal for like within several months of this conflict? And well, I'll start with you, Colonel Wilkerson. I think I started with Command Chief Fritz last time. Let me know what your thoughts are on this.
Well, Jamal, when I listened and watched that video, which is now, I understand, had been pulled back, I had one of two conclusions to come to. Either, and this is an easy one to come to, we're dealing with a group of clowns who don't know what's going on and who are completely out of contact with reality, but often mend their words to portray otherwise. Or two, they're complicit with a gargantuan lie crafted by Bibi Netanyahu, but I must come to a swift conclusion agreed in by Donald Trump. And maybe it's the other way around. A lie constructed by Donald Trump and Steve Miller and other people around him and accepted by Netanyahu for the temporary present. Either way, it's not a good sign. And I don't have anything to say about a civilian, not even a part of the government, meeting 3 times or whatever with the CIA or getting information from them. After all, the CIA briefs the heads of the telecommunications networks and other important corporations in America all the time, and have been doing that quite a long time, but amplified it majorly after 9/11, when we brought many of these people like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and others into the government's councils so that they could help us track terrorists. And of course, they came in very willingly, because they began to build up data banks on Americans across the country that were very helpful to them for commercial reasons. So this is a complicity that's been going on for a very long time.
The only thing I can say to this is that I got one worse than that. I mean, when you look at Kushner, who I consider just a civilian, and playing a major role in our so-called foreign policy. That is very disturbing to me, especially knowing that, if I remember right, took $2 billion from the Saudis. And for him to be right in the middle, that's more alarming to me than anything. But regarding, Hamas wanting to come to the table, 2 years ago, I don't know, but I believe that. I'm not surprised that CIA probably would know that and keep it from anyone, to include Trump. So that is not surprising to me. I've seen it happen before, during the second Iraq war, where, the CIA, DIA, the Department of Defense intelligence arm, we're all keeping information from one another. And so, that's why I think the DNI was created, to try to bring all that information together. But I think, that our intelligence still keep, especially the different agencies, still keep information away from one another. So I'm not surprised. I think you're on mute, Jamal. I can't hear you.
Apologies. It's raining here, and I'm just trying to make sure that it didn't translate through. Is this a real deal? Is this quote unquote ceasefire an actual ceasefire?
No, it's not. It never has been. Bibi Netanyahu never met a ceasefire he intended to keep, whether it was with Lebanon, Gaza, West Bank, anywhere. He's never kept a ceasefire. He doesn't have it in his disposition to keep a ceasefire. What he does is he uses ceasefires to not only fool those who might have thought they orchestrated the ceasefire, like Witkoff and Kushner, and maybe even President Trump. At the same time, he's deepening his killing of his opponents, in this case, Palestinians all over the place, West Bank or whatever. I just watched a video of a reporter, a white man, accompanying some browner people, namely Palestinians, in the West Bank, accosted by settlers and an IDF Army Jeep, which he approached with tender care. And they had their guns on him the whole time, and asked for help to help the Palestinians, their journalists too, along with him, in their car to turn around and get out of the area. Well, the Jeep hastened away quickly and left him to the proud disposition of the settlers. This is the way Bibi Netanyahu's people operate all the time. And with regard to this ceasefire, he's now using that as an opportunity to continue to smash the Palestinians everywhere he can, kill them or capture them. And he's using some other people within the strip, if you will, that are placed there with Israeli help to act as if they are being oppressed by Hamas and that they have to kill Hamas too. So he's got ancillaries operating in the area now. No doubt he prepared well ahead of time while Donald was contemplating Kushner and Witkoff and their deal, and Vance contemplating his trip to the region, to be surprised by the fact that even he has indicated Netanyahu is not keeping one iota of this ceasefire. Meanwhile, he's building up his ability and rest in recouping that portion of the IDF that was really being hard pressed in Gaza City. And in some ways, had he continued, it was going to be defeated majorly. He's resting, recuperating them so that he can have all the assets he needs when he wants to go full bore as he opens a new theater of war with Iran, which is now, I think, utterly inevitable. It might be delayed somewhat because he's had to take into consideration some new intelligence about Iran's capacity to do major damage to him. So he's trying to deal with that right now. But this is all going to spread. It's all going to become a much deeper, wider conflict. And Donald Trump's going to have a choice. And Bibi's going to give him no choice. Donald Trump is going to have to bail Bibi out when he gets in existential trouble with Iran. That's the whole plan.
But Donald Trump has to know this. I mean, what I mean by that is, within a day of this quote unquote ceasefire, with all the pomp and circumstance and everything else that went along with it, Israel started killing Gazans again. And they tried to use this pretext of a bomb that was put off, when really it wasn't a bomb. The U.S. knew it wasn't a bomb. The U.S. apparently, Donald Trump contacted Netanyahu, was like, hey, cut this out. But again, the killing has continued. So this was the same situation that we were in with Joe Biden, where anything that takes place that Israel does, the U.S. turns around and says, that damn Hamas, and Hamas better not do X or Y, meaning they would never acknowledge that it was Israel that is violating the ceasefire. So if you're not acknowledging it, doesn't that by definition means that you're perfectly aware of what is taking place? Meaning this is not Netanyahu playing Trump. This is Trump being perfectly in on it.
Yeah. Hey, Jamal, let me just say this. We keep using the term ceasefire. Well, let's be quite frank. There's been no ceasefire.
Right.
You know, we keep saying a ceasefire. The day after, you know, there was no ceasefire. There's never planned to be a ceasefire from the Israelis or Bibi Netanyahu's standpoint of view. And, you know, I always tell folks, just use your own critical thinking. You know, okay, you know, say Hamas was willing to make a deal 2 years ago. Well, I want you to think about this. The only leverage that Hamas had was those 20 live prisoners. You know, I'm tired of us saying, you know, hostages, and then we tell the Palestinians they're prisoners. You know, those 20 prisoners, and I guess I better be kind because there were, you know, women and children, so we will say hostages, I guess. But you know, in the military. Well, good point. Good point. But let me just say this. I'm sorry. Say it again.
No, I was just pointing it out. I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yeah. And so, one, there's not been a ceasefire, so we probably just need to stop saying that. Bibi has always had the plan. You know, he was going to destroy, you know, Gaza. You know, one key word Larry was kept saying. He's saying Bibi Netanyahu was going to kill Palestinians. Never saying Hamas. It's about Palestinians. It's not about Hamas. Hamas is just the boogeyman word, an organization they use to go ahead and surely destroy Hamas. There's never been a ceasefire. And when I was alluding about critical thinking, just think about this. The only leverage that Hamas had was the 20 living hostages. Okay? Now, with that said, they gave up those 20 living hostages. And, oh, by the way, the ones that were dead that they could possibly find, they gave them up. Now the pressure's on. Oh, where are the others? Well, listen, think about all that rubble that Israel caused that probably caused some of the death of some of the hostages. But yet we keep pointing the finger at who? Hamas. Hamas gave us the biggest leverage they had to get this so-called ceasefire. What has Israel did but continue to bomb and kill Palestinians? Not Hamas, but Palestinians.
And Jamal, let's just get this straight about hostages and POWs, or whatever term you want to use. We came up with the wonderful concept of illegal combatants after 9/11.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
But here's the truth. Israel has had thousands of hostages from Palestinians in its draconian prisons, some of which would be absolutely, if they were revealed as to what happens there to the American people, they'd be revolted by it, I'm sure. So let's just balance the sheet here. Israel has thousands of Palestinian hostages being held under horrible conditions, and some of them, like Barghouti, for years, decades. So let's balance the scales here. Let's talk about what people really are in this conflict. And while I'm doing it, let's just point out once again for your listening audience that Hamas had every right under international law to attack its oppressor, Israel. Every right. Now, you can parse what they did on October the 7th to civilians, although we now know from Mearsheimer and others that probably 50% or better of the casualties on October the 7th were caused by the Israelis themselves, especially the Apache helicopters. But they did do some things that under the law of land warfare, they shouldn't have done. But basically, they had every right to attack their oppressor, Israel.
And let me just say this, as I tell folks in doing the critical thinking to your audience, I mean, use your own brains. It's a fact. It's not an opinion that they're under an occupation. And under an occupation, you have the right to fight back. Let's get it straight again. There's no ceasefire because Israel continued to bomb and provide, I just say, the deaths that they're killing, you know, Palestinians. It's happening. It never stopped. It never ceased.
And just to add to what Dennis said, they are also cutting off the food again. Because Netanyahu has discovered through his use of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation at 4 feeding sites, he's discovered that the easiest, most efficient way is not bombs, bullets, and bayonets. It's food, holding food back. And not only holding food back, but killing the Palestinians when they congregate around the few food points there are. So he's discovered a war crime par excellence that's a more efficient way of killing, and he's using it. He's cut the food off again.
Starving a civilian population.
Yeah, it's grotesque, to put it mildly. Chief Fritz, what do you think is the end goal? And I'm going to ask both of you this in regards to Gaza. What does this look like at the, I don't know, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years out? I don't believe for a moment that this quote unquote ceasefire, as they're calling it, is going to last. But what is the ultimate end goal in all of this? I mean, are they really going to kill 1.5 million people? If that's what's left.
As Larry alluded to, and I thank you for so kindly, always mentioning my book, Deadly Betrayal. That was the start of what is happening right now. It's not going to conclude until the final piece of that, and that is going to war with Iran. Why? I'll remind your audience again, why Iraq? Why Syria? Why Iran? Why previously Libya? Why? Because they were the ones that were supporting the Palestinians. They were the ones that was resisting the occupation of the entire Middle East if you left it in the hands of Bibi Netanyahu. And so is this going to end? No, it's not going to end until the big war happens. And that big war is between Iran and Israel and probably others that will be brought into this war. It's not going to end no time soon until Bibi, the so-called, what he sees in his mind, the Messiah, to have greater Israel, and that's not going to happen.
Colonel Wilkerson, you pointed out that there was new intelligence that Iran had the capability of effectively damaging Israel more than what they thought, in which case the war is postponed. What was the new intelligence? Just additional weaponry, armaments, working with China and Russia? What was the...
I think what's happened, Mossad has been throughout its career recruiting terrorists. I'll call them terrorists, guerrillas, call them fifth column, whatever you want, inside Iran. And it's been very successful. We saw that in the previous 12-day Beautiful War. But we also saw the Iranians essentially begin to appreciate this clandestine capability, if you will, of Israel, mostly funneled or fueled by money that probably came from our taxpayers, because these people were highly paid agents inside Iran, and they did a lot of damage to Iran. Well, Israel, since those 12 beautiful days, has been trying to reconstitute this kind of fifth column inside Iran. And they're Azeris, they're all manner of different people along the border regions, mostly Afghans and others, who are highly paid to go in and destabilize Iran. They have been singularly unsuccessful this time. The reason they've been unsuccessful is twofold. One, the Iranians figured this out. They're, after all, not total dummies for sure. And they got rid of a lot of these people, and their getting rid of them was rather draconian, as you might expect under the circumstances, because they did a lot of assassinations and things like that. So the Israelis are really lacking this third front, if you will, inside Iran this time around. The second thing they found out through their intelligence expertise, which is quite extensive, as you well know, they found out how much support Russia has given to Iran already, and they found out how much support Russia has promised Iran ultimately should they go to war with Israel, and even should they go to war with the United States ultimately. And this extends to all manner of assistance from Russia, up to and possibly including actual Russian pilots flying the very sophisticated fighter aircraft that are in Iran now by the squadrons and armed to the teeth, as well as the air defense outfits and so forth. China has said it will back Russia up in that effort. It's not going to put any troops on the ground, I don't think, but it's going to back Russia up. So you've got two of the biggest powers in the world in terms of military might standing behind Iran. And this is revolutionary, because if you check Iranian history, Persian history, you'll see there's always been great circumspection amongst the Persians as to whether or not they would deal with the Russians, the Soviets, or the Russians before the Soviets. because they've always coveted Iranian territory and always wanted some of that northern rim, if you will, and always wanted the oil coming out of the Persian Gulf. This is a long history. So it took a lot for the people in Iran who aren't like Americans. They study history. They know their history, both the history of empire and the history of the recent, more modern Iran with the Shah and then the Ayatollah. So they know it's a difficult thing to bring the Iranian people around to cooperating with Russia. They have done that, and they have done it big time. And that shows you how serious Russia, China, and Iran are about defending all of their interests in Southwest Asia. So this is a different war that Israel is contemplating. And Netanyahu knows that because his intelligence knows that. But I don't think it's going to deter him because he thinks what? What does he think? He thinks that Donald Trump is coming in to assist him when he gets Israel in peril.
Let me just add. Yeah,
please.
No, I'm sorry. Let me just add to that. Let's go back to the last war. Forget intelligence and all that. Let's go back. If it was not for the U.S., if it was not for Jordan, if it was not for Egypt, if it was not for Saudi Arabia, there would have been more destruction in Israel. Do you think they quit fighting just because of the fact, we want to do out of good deed? Have they quit fighting, as we alluded to, in Gaza? Oh, by the way, they're still bombing Lebanon. And think about that. There's been more bombs in Iran. In fact, I call that a true ceasefire, if you will, because the war is not over. It's not going to happen until that big war happens. That's the one between Iran and Israel. And probably everybody else will be thrown in that. Do you think the next time Qatar will be a part of the so-called alliance with Israel? No. It's already been proven they will get bombed. Now, let's go back. Iran, they bombed Qatar. And so you don't think they will do it again? And oh, by the way, Jordan, if this bigger war happened, if Jordan or Egypt decide that they won't, at the pressure from the U.S., support override clearances for Israeli warplanes, you think that's going to happen this time? No. And so, like I said, with all of that said, Bibi Netanyahu considers himself the Messiah. His whole goal, he is one maniac. He truly is. He keeps these wars going. Now, Jamal, let me just jump on something else that's different. We keep talking about Trump. My biggest disappointment, and I must say this, it's probably 90%. I shouldn't use such a strong word, but it's about, let's say 98% of our Congress I don't like, because they've shown they're complicit. They're low down. Listen to what I'm about to say. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They're low down, dirty bombs to allow this killing to completely happen and not say a word. Now, because they're so entrenched and love power and prestige, some of them are succumbing to the pressure that we're doing here in the United States of telling, hey, if you take AIPAC in the future, we're not going to vote for you. That movement is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that's when you're going to find out how low down, dirty bombs our Congress is, because of the fact they're going to succumb to that pressure in the future. You know, let me just say another thing, and it's coming out into the open. I've been saying for over a year, TikTok. It wasn't about China. It was about Israel. And now Bibi Netanyahu has all let us know that. And so the awakening is happening. You know, I'm so sick and tired of Republicans making woke such a bad word. Well, we, all of America, and definitely the world already, they are woke to our country, to complicit in what has been happening in the Middle East and Israel. People are becoming more woke, a positive word. Stop letting the Republicans in the United States of America say woke is a bad word. It is a good thing. We are becoming woke. And I proudly say I am woke, and more others are becoming woke.
Jamal, let me just add one thing to that augments what Dennis is saying, with every word of which I agree with. Kushner and Witkoff made a huge historical and present day era in saying that there's plenty of land in Jordan, there's plenty of land in Egypt, there's plenty of land in other Arab countries for these Palestinians. There is no such thing. Yeah. Sisi in Egypt is sitting on a powder keg of people, refugees from East Africa. He can't feed and water the people he has in his country now. And he knows that, but he's under the pressure from the United States, not to do anything. And the king of Jordan He's got lots of land to put these Palestinians on. Come on, Kushner, Witkoff, you're idiots. You're idiots. You're historical and present day idiots.
What's like 60% of Jordan is full of Palestinians or something like that? Like
more Palestinians by far than there are the king's people.
And let me just add, the king's wife is Palestinian.
Yes.
Yes, she is. A very attractive woman. Yes, she is. Well, she is. I mean, I'm a guy. One of the things I'm curious, you brought up 2 points that I kind of want to hit, and I don't know if you know this answer to this, Colonel Wilkerson. Are these Russian pilots flying as mercenaries, or are they flying under the Russian banner? Like, we send troops to Ukraine all the time under the idea of them being mercenaries. I don't know if you remember this, Figaro, the French art magazine. I think this was within the first few months of the war. Reporter goes to Ukraine, and he's like, "Oh my God, the Americans are all over this place." Now, America's not going to acknowledge that they're all over this place. They are "quote unquote" mercenaries, and Russia's not going to acknowledge it, because the moment that you acknowledge it, you're stuck with the fact that we're acknowledging that European troops or American troops are ensconced all throughout this war. What is true in the sense of Russian pilots potentially flying for Iran? Are they flying under the Iranian banner, or are they flying under the Russian banner? I mean, those are radically two different things.
Yeah, Jamal, this is nothing new. The Russians flew against us in Vietnam. The Russians flew against us in Korea during those 2 conflicts.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to do. And what you do is you maintain territorial integrity. That is to say, you don't fly outside the borders of Iran. So if you go down, quote, in friendly hands, unquote.
I see.
But there's precedent for this. There's precedent for us doing this too, as a matter of fact. But the Russians have been very good about entering other conflicts. We used to call them third world conflicts on the side of the country opposing us and flying against our pilots. And they're very good pilots. In fact, I've talked with pilots who flew against them in, say, the air battle over Hanoi, for example, where they were stunned by the talent that came in suddenly, and that gave them a lot of trouble. Started shooting them down, for example, because the Russians have pretty damn good pilots. And of course, they're proficient in their aircraft, which are every bit as good aircraft for aircraft as ours are. In fact, I'd say a couple of their aircraft are better than ours. Top of their line fighters are better than ours. They're younger too. They're fresher. And then when you have the help on the ground with sophisticated things like S-400s or S-300 air defense capability and other things like that, then if you die on friendly territory. And so your body's evacuated and nobody ever knows. Now, does the CIA, does Mossad know? Absolutely. But what are they going to do with that information? Go out and scream that Russia's in the war? Are the Russians going to really be deterred by that? No. So this is a thing that happens all the time. There are Russian pilots, I'll guarantee you right now, flying for other countries in other places where combat might be contemplated than you would think. For example, I'm told there are some that have been experimenting in Somalia with what we're doing there. Really? This gets them experience. It gets them combat experience that they wouldn't get elsewhere. So that happens as well, that they get a place where they can train. Ukraine is used for that, but it's not much of a training ground now because they've shot Ukraine out of the air. Mm-hmm. They've shot them completely out of the air. Russia has what we call air supremacy, not just air superiority. They have air supremacy over Ukraine. So it's just done. And everybody that knows about it usually keeps it quiet because everybody does it.
Hey, let me just say something that Larry just said. I've said this in the past before too. There are people that like what Trump is doing. Their problem with Trump, and I said it before, I'll say it again. He says the quiet part out loud.
Yes,
and it's almost like he gave the number of aircraft, that we were supporting Israel on. I would have never imagined, all the refuelers that we had and all the fighters we had up in the air, during that, I guess we call it the 12-day war or whatever the case may be. He says the quiet part out loud. And probably the worst one he made was about the CIA authorization to do certain things in Venezuela. that he said out loud, which would probably be the most top secret information that we have right now going on, because we have a history of doing it, but we always kept it quiet, and now Trump says that, out loud of what we're doing. The other thing, whether it be real or subliminal or whatever the case may be, him saying, if Hamas doesn't do what they're supposed to do, we will go in. Yes. But then he got corrected. Somebody asked him in the press about, hey, you mean we have boots on the ground? Well, going back a little what Larry said earlier, as long as we continue to support BB, we will have boots on the ground, whether you like it or not. That's always been the case with us. Now, let me go back and say something else when I was saying I'm so mad at our Congress, because this thing is going to explode. And where Congress come into play, I mean, if we're going to go to war, where's the authorization from Congress for us to go to war? Because it's going to happen. Bibi's going to do everything he can to draw us into this.
And under international law, Jamal, we're at war with Venezuela right now. And
there you go. We declared war on them.
Congress has not said a word. And while we're talking about the CIA and Donald Trump revealing things, in his first term, Donald Trump signed a presidential finding and sent it to Mike Pompeo, then director of the CIA, to overthrow Maduro. So we have been doing this ever since Donald Trump's first term. And let me tell you, Joe Biden and Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan did nothing to stop it.
Nothing. And this is why I say we have a history of doing this, no matter what administration. It's in our DNA. It goes back to what something that Larry just said. Back in his first administration, we were doing this. But Trump says the quiet part out loud. He has told us himself.
Will we be dragged into this war with Iran at some point? I mean, this seems mental to me, that there's an acknowledgement. We got hit the first time around, meaning the 12-day war. Israel took a beating. This time around, they acknowledge China and Russia are going to be far more engaged into this conflict. And yet we're still going in because we believe America is going to come in to save us, which I guess the question is, will we?
I don't think,
knowing the consequences of this, will we get engaged in this larger war?
I don't think that Trump has any choice, given his commitment to Miriam Adelson and other people like that. I don't think he has any choice. And just here's another thing that's going to happen when it becomes apparent that Israel is going down. Then Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, and other countries will pounce. They will pounce, and there will be no Israel, period. And I don't know that the United States can tolerate that under any pressure.
You think they'll pounce? I mean, up to this point, they've been very,
Listen, I was going to say that earlier. I was alluding to it already when I mentioned Qatar. I do personally think they're going to pounce. I was going to mention that. I do. That
they're going to throw off the yoke of America and go after Israel. I mean, up to this point, they've been working side by side with Israel. Qatar has been knocking.
We've been counting on these so-called Abraham Accords and all that. I want you to think about this officially. There's only two countries over there that has what I would call an official peace deal with Israel, and that is Jordan and Egypt. Discount the Abraham Accords for right now. I'm talking about official. Iraq, for example, was the first leg of this war that's continually happening right now. They have no diplomatic ties with Israel. After that big war, they have no diplomatic ties. Of course they will. And we alluded to this earlier. The majority of the country in Jordan is what? Palestinian. I'm surprised that the king is lasting this long, to be quite frank with you. Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't been over. So I'll leave it at that. Yes, I will not be surprised they will all jump, because that 1.3 billion to Jordan, the 1.8 to Egypt is not going to mean a thing.
Not when they can get rid of their number one enemy in the
There
region.
You go. Exactly. That's the only reason they're getting that money right now. Bribery to have peace with Israel. 1.8, 1.3 billions of dollars, and it won't mean a thing if Israel goes down. And oh, by the way, now think about this for a moment. As we talked about Iran's capability, Russia offered help in the 12-day war, but they refused it. We got it. We got this. Okay. Now they're going to accept that help. And as Larry mentioned earlier, China's probably not going to put any boots on the ground and be involved, but they will provide support. You take that to the bank. They have no choice but to.